Okay, so today we're going to be moving into section 9.4, which is all about factoring to solve quadratic equations. Okay, so now we're going to be applying what we learned at the end of last chapter, which is to factor to a quadratic equation, which is basically figure out what value of x makes the equation true. Okay, so to warm up with, I have a couple of a linear equation over here and a basic quadratic equation over here. Okay, well, what do we do in solving a basic equation? Well, we try to isolate the variable, right? You try to get the variable all by itself on that side of the equal sign, right? So in this case, you would undo what's happening to the variable. You'd add 4 to both sides. Be left with 3x is equal to 15, and then you divide by 3, and so x would equal 5. Okay, right? Easy enough. Same thing over here. Trying to get the variable all by itself. So you undo what's happening. So you subtract 6. X squared is equal to 16. To undo a square, you take the square root, and when you do that in an equation, you get plus or minus 4. Okay, so again, really easy to do when there's only one variable term. Okay, notice how in this equation here you just have the 3x, and in this equation here you just have the x squared term. Okay, so what happens if we have a quadratic trinomial? Okay, quadratic degree 2, trinomial 3 terms, but they have 2 separate x terms. Okay, so you have your x squared term and you have an x term. How do you get the variable by itself? Okay, well, it says in the name of the section that we're going to factor. So if we factor, it's a different way of solving this equation. It utilizes something called the zero product property, which essentially says if you have something times another thing and the product is 0, okay, then either the first thing and or the second thing has to equal 0. Obviously, right? Okay, so now let's I'm going to make the connection here for you. So if we factor this, okay, if we ignore that this is an equation, this was just an expression here. What are the factors of negative 33 that make negative 8? Well, it's going to be negative 11 and positive 3. Okay, so if this was, that's how that factors, right? Okay, so you have x minus 11 times x plus 3. But the product of those two factors is equal to 0. So therefore, either the first factor and or the second factor has to equal 0. So using that knowledge there, we can actually then just set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. Okay, so all you have to do here is add your 11 over, and x equals 11. And all you would have to do on this equation is subtract 3, so x equals negative 3. So I'm literally adding just one step to the factoring process, and that's setting each of these factors equal to 0 to solve. Okay, if you put in 11 into this equation, 11 squared is 121, minus 88 is 33, minus another 33 is 0. Okay, so same thing with negative 3. If you put in negative 3 here, you get positive 9. Negative 3 times negative 8 is positive 24, so 9 plus 24 is 33, minus 33 is 0. Both of these solutions work. Okay, so that's the process that we're doing today. Okay, we're just going to factor these equations, set the factors equal to 0, and there you go. Okay, so let's do that. You don't have a leading coefficient, so you don't have to worry about it. What numbers multiply together to make 15 that add up to 8? Well, that's going to be 5 and 3, right? But it's now an equation. So you set each of these factors equal to 0 to solve. All right, and that's all you got to do. So here you just subtract 5, x equals negative 5. Here you subtract 3, and x equals negative 3. Okay, right? Pretty easy. Okay, it works even if there's a leading coefficient. Okay, you'd still factor, just like we did at the end of the last chapter. Okay, with the factors, with the leading coefficient here, remember, you have to consider its factors. Well, good thing for us that the factors of 2 are just 2 and 1. So you start with the 2 and the 1, and then you list all the possible factors of the constant. So you either got a 1 and a 4 and a 2 and a 2. Okay, so you're going to plug those in to this spot and this spot so that we add up to 9, remembering that you're going to multiply this number over here by the 2x and this one by the 1x. Okay, so trying to get up to 9, if we do 2 times 4, that gives us 8, and we do the 1 times 1, that gives us 9. So you'd have the 8x and the 1x to get you the 9x. So these are the two factors, 2x plus 1, x plus 4, that equals 0. Now you got to set them both equal to 0. So 2x plus 1 equals 0, x plus 4 equals 0. Okay, as you saw in the last one, some people get to this step and then they just flip the sign around. Okay, that's fine. That works as long as there's nothing in front of the x. Okay, so like over here on this x plus 4, yeah, x is going to equal negative 4. That's no problem. But a common mistake that I see students make is they just say that x equals negative 1 from over here. Well, that's wrong. Okay, you got to subtract the 1, but you're left with 2x is equal to negative 1. So you divide by 2. And so x is equal to negative 1 half. A little hint, if there's a leading coefficient, one of your answers is most likely going to be a fraction. Okay, so just pay attention to that. Okay, so on your own, I have 4 problems for you to do. Go ahead, pause the video and do them. Otherwise, I'm just going to remove the sticky notes and work under there with the solutions. And yeah, hopefully, this was easy enough for you. Just a little note on the last one there. You can see the last one there. Okay, it was not set equal to 0. This only works when your equation is set equal to 0. So that's why we had to move the 49 over to the left side first before we factored that one. Okay.